Here's a video showing exactly what not to do during a grease fire. I don't know if this is a moment of true horror or true stupidity.
Turn it off! Turn it, what the fuck? What do I do? Bro, turn it off! Turn it off!
Tanner, hurry up! Tanner,
Turn it off!
Tanner, turn it off!
I don't know what to do!
Grab it!
Is it grab?
Tanner!
Grab the
Tanner!
protection.
Grab it! Tanner!
What
Oh my God, Tanner!
What is it?
Tanner!
Is it?
Oh my God, Tanner! Tanner!
I don't know what it is!
It's up there, Tanner! Tanner!
Instead of standing around like deer in headlights while the fire kept growing, the solution here was actually pretty simple. The obvious first move should have been turning the burner off immediately. As long as the heat stays on, the flames keep feeding. Immediately after that, they should have grabbed a larger pot, a metal lid, or even a baking tray and covered the pan completely. No oxygen means no fire. You don't throw water on it, you don't move it, and you definitely don't dump it across the kitchen. What ends up happening works out purely by luck, not because it was smart. Dumping a burning pan can spread flaming oil everywhere. And that's usually how small kitchen fires turn into house fires. Grease fires look chaotic, but the solution is simple. Kill the heat, cover it, leave it alone. Cyclopia is a real congenital disorder marked by the failure of the embryo to properly divide the orbits of the eyes into two separate cavities, resulting in a single eye in the middle of the face. It's usually caused by a mutation in the Sonic the Hedgehog gene, real, and typically results in death within a few hours after birth. The tragic condition occurs in 1 out of every 200 miscarried fetuses, and the maximum recorded lifespan of a child born with cyclopia is 1 day. Following the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, people have been putting up wanted posters across New York City targeting other healthcare CEOs. The posters read, "Healthcare CEOs should not feel safe," after his 28-year-old teacher allegedly made creepy remarks to a 6th grade girl. A young student catfished the man and made him think he was talking to a 14-year-old girl. After receiving concerning messages from the teacher, the boy reported him to police and he now faces charges of sexual exploitation. In 2019, Salman Mirza and his ex wanted to hook up, but they didn't have a condom, so they decided to use epoxy glue to seal it instead. His friends later found him unconscious and drove him to the hospital, where he died of multiple organ failures due to the faux condom. In 1982, an Arizona man named David Grundman died while shooting a 26-foot-tall saguaro cactus to try and knock it down. But a 500-pound arm of the cactus fell on him, crushing him to death. In 2001, a man from Utah had been driving a van full of friends on a mountain when his brakes suddenly failed. But rather than trying to save them, he tried to save himself by jumping out of the car to his death, while all of his friends ended up surviving. In 2001, a Florida man was shot dead while testing out a bulletproof potion that he received from a witch doctor. After applying the potion for 2 weeks, he asked a friend to shoot him so that he could finally test it out. Turns out the potion was just cherry Kool-Aid, and the man died instantly. This was the final photo taken of James Gandolfini the night the 51-year-old actor suffered a massive heart attack in his hotel room in Rome, Italy. Hours before his sudden death, he scarfed down a double order of fried king prawns and a huge pile of foie gras, washed down with 2 pina coladas, 4 shots of rum, and a few beers. It would end up being his final meal. This 1998 photo was taken in Omagh, Ireland, just minutes before a bomb placed in the red car exploded. 29 people were killed by the blast and another 220 were injured. The cameraman of this photo died, but the man and his daughter happened to survive. This security photo shows teacher Dave Sanders guiding students out of the cafeteria during the Columbine High School massacre of 1999. After hearing gunshots from outside the school, Sanders sounded the alarm and saved over 100 students by herding them away from the shooters. Sadly, he was later shot 3 times and ended up being the only teacher killed in the shooting. This photo of Sean and Michael McQuilkin was taken at Sequoia National Park just seconds before they were struck by lightning in 1975. All 3, including their photographer's sister, survived the strike, but younger brother Sean suffered 3rd-degree burns and spent 6 months in a coma. After being unable to overcome the physical and mental toll of the incident, Sean sadly ended up taking his own life in 1989. In this photo, Japanese student Ayano Tokamasu can be seen gazing at Niagara Falls while standing on the fence. But just moments later, she lost her footing and tragically fell to her death. In 2016, a Chinese man named Jia was trying to take some selfies with a walrus at a zoo in China. But after a few pics, the massive walrus unexpectedly attacked Jia, clamping its jaws onto him and playfully dragging him into its pool. In a heroic attempt to save Jia, an experienced zookeeper tried to intervene, but both were tragically killed by the beast. Christopher Lee, the actor who played Saruman in The Lord of the Rings and Count Dooku in Star Wars, was related to Confederate General Robert E. Lee, was a flight lieutenant in the British Royal Air Force and killed multiple Nazis, climbed Mount Vesuvius 3 days before it erupted, tripped over a live bomb and survived, and released a death metal album at the age of 88. During World War II, French weightlifter Charles Rigolo was jailed after punching a Nazi guard. He then broke out of the cell by bending the bars, allowed other prisoners to escape with him, and then beat the guard who jailed him. Lachman Gurung was a Gurkha soldier during World War II who once threw back 2 enemy grenades from his trench before the third one exploded in his hand. He then single-handedly defended his post for over 4 hours against 200 Japanese enemies, killing 31 soldiers using only his left hand. He ended up surviving and was awarded the Victoria Cross for his actions, the highest and rarest honor in the British Army. In May of 2020, Yukon student Peter Manfredonia was having issues with his motorcycle. When 2 elderly gentlemen approached to help him, Peter pulled out a samurai sword and murdered one man while seriously injuring the other. He then circled around them multiple times with his bike before stealing another man's pickup truck and fleeing to his hometown. That's when he murdered his childhood friend and kidnapped the victim's girlfriend before driving south. Once he reached New Jersey, he fled the car alone and started walking on foot. Manfredonia's actions quickly sparked a massive manhunt that spanned multiple states and garnered national attention. However, it became increasingly difficult to locate the killer since this was during the peak of the pandemic, allowing him to easily conceal his face with a mask. After a week-long search, Peter was finally apprehended in Maryland. He was later diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses that caused him to suddenly snap. He received a 55-year prison sentence for his crimes and then apparently gained 200 pounds while in prison. These are some extinct animal species that scientists plan on bringing back. Benjamin, the last Tasmanian tiger, died in 1936 after being locked outside of its sleeping quarters and freezing to death at the Hobart Zoo. Ever since the species went extinct, an overabundance of their disease-carrying prey has run rampant because its primary predator disappeared, making the thylacine a strong candidate to become one of the first species to de-extinct through cloning. The quagga is a subspecies of the plain zebra that went extinct in 1883 due to excessive hunting. But the Quagga Project seeks to use selective breeding to bring these animals back, with the hope that their reintroduction will eradicate some of the invasive trees throughout South Africa. The dodo bird evolved without any natural predators, but humans eventually took advantage of this and killed them all for food. But in 2007, scientists came across the best preserved dodo sample ever found, which may make it possible to bring them back through the help of their closest living relative, the Nicobar pigeon. It may sound like something straight out of Jurassic Park, but this is all 100% real. Extinct animals that scientists are bringing back, Part 2. The science of cloning and de-extinction has been possible for decades, but there hasn't been the funding or motivation for it until now. A company called Colossal Biosciences has put together a team of scientists specialized in the field of de-extinction, and the first animal species they plan on reviving is the woolly mammoth. They'll be implanting embryos into Asian elephants using artificial wombs, existing mammoth DNA, and CRISPR technology. The company hopes that reintroducing these animals to the tundras will help make the Arctic colder by packing down the snow and slowing down the melting of the permafrost. They plan on starting with 100 woolly mammoths in a Siberian area called Pleistocene Park, and are hoping that millions of mammoths will end up taking back the Arctic within the next few decades. Colossal is striving to birth the first one by the end of 2024, and the company plans on completing its project by 2027. In September of 2008, Blink-182 drummer Travis Barker survived a plane crash that killed 4 out of the 6 people on board. He suffered third-degree burns over 65% of his body and underwent 16 surgeries over an 11-week span. Travis was in so much pain that he repeatedly called friends and offered them over $1 million to help him end his own life. A prion disease called Kuru can be contracted when a human consumes another human's brain. It was typically found in cannibals from New Guinea who would consume the brains of their dead relatives as part of a funerary ritual. The fatal disease would slowly form holes in the victims' brains and cause them to laugh uncontrollably. In 2016, a Texas father drove home and went to sleep, forgetting that his 6-month-old daughter was still strapped to her car seat. Hours later, he found her unresponsive in the blistering hot car. Before attempting CPR and calling 911, he brought her inside and placed her in the refrigerator to try and revive her. But the child had likely died hours earlier, and the man was charged with manslaughter. There's typically an IQ minimum of 80 points to serve in the US military. But to meet the manpower requirements of the Vietnam War, the US Army loosened up on this policy and began recruiting soldiers with mental disabilities. These men were known as McNamara's morons and died at 5 times the rate of other Americans in the war. This is also what the character Forrest Gump was based on. A suicide bomber in Afghanistan was thwarted by a stray dog which barked and snarled at the man, causing him to prematurely detonate at the entrance. The dog was then flown to the United States and appeared on Oprah before being adopted. But tragically, she ran away from home and was captured by an animal shelter which ended up euthanizing her by mistake. In 1943, Polish ballerina Francesca Mann arrived at Auschwitz. When ordered to take off her clothes, she did so provocatively to divert the attention of the guards. While the roll call officer was distracted, she grabbed his gun and shot the man in the head. She then managed to wound another guard before other prisoners joined her rebellion until they were all shot dead. In the case that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were left stranded on the moon, NASA planned on cutting off communication with them. They didn't want to record how the men chose to die, leaving them to either run out of oxygen or take their own lives with no further earthly contact. FDNY Ladder 3 was one of the first units to show up at the World Trade Center on 9/11. Its crew of 11 men sadly perished in the collapse of the North Tower, and now their truck is on display in the 9/11 Museum. In April of 2015, 28-year-old Shayna Sims gained access to a funeral home in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She pretended to be a makeup artist to access the body of Tabitha Lynch. Apparently, Shayna resented Lynch and suspected that her husband had been having an affair with her. So as payback, Sims decided to mutilate Lynch's body, cutting up her face and removing multiple organs and chunks of her hair. Court sentenced her to 16 years in prison for unlawfully removing a body part from a corpse. This photo taken last month shows 7-year-old Arthur Bittencourt giving a thumbs up while playing in a pile of poisonous limestone powder in Brazil. Just minutes later, Arthur was tragically fighting for his life after accidentally inhaling particles of the toxic substance. He was quickly rushed to the hospital and pronounced dead on arrival. In 2022, Ukrainian woman Irina Filkina had her photo taken after getting a manicure for Valentine's Day. A few weeks later, she was killed by a tank while pushing her bicycle in the town of Bucha, and her body was identified by her manicure. This was the chilling moment when a laser pointer was shown on Elijah Clayton during a Madden tournament at a Florida mall in 2018. The shooter had lost a game and refused to shake his opponent's hand before leaving the tournament. He later returned with a handgun and fired into the crowd before turning the gun on himself. He killed 2 people, including Clayton, and injured 10 more. This photo taken in 2004 shows Deborah Garlick enjoying the island paradise of Phi Phi in Thailand. But soon afterwards, a massive tsunami struck the area, killing around 230,000 people in total. This was the last photo taken on Deborah's camera before she was tragically swept away by the wave. This peaceful photo of the New York City skyline was taken from the Manhattan Bridge around 8:30 a.m. on September 11, 2001. Just 16 minutes later, a plane would crash into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Here's a pic of volcanologist David A. Johnston 13 hours before he was killed by the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. He was the first to report the eruption from an observation post 6 miles away, transmitting the message, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it," just before he was swept away by a lateral blast traveling at near supersonic speed. He had spent the last several months of his life studying the volcano, and his alert likely saved thousands of lives. Keanu Reeves' sister Kim was diagnosed with the deadly blood cancer leukemia in 1991. In response, he sold his home to move closer to her, cleaned her house, cooked her meals, and provided all of her necessary medications. Once she recovered, Keanu started a private charity to fund cancer research in children's hospitals. In 2009, he was interviewed saying, "I don't like to attach my name to it, I just let the foundation do what it does." Frank Sinatra died the night of Seinfeld's finale, and his ambulance made it to the hospital in record time since there was no traffic due to everyone watching the show. Hans Scharf, the most successful Nazi interrogator in World War II, never physically harmed an enemy soldier. Instead, he treated them with respect and kindness, taking them for walks, letting them visit their captured comrades in the hospital, and even letting captured pilots go on test flights. His methods were very successful since virtually everyone ended up talking. In 2003, a woman found a painting in the trash on a New York City curb. She felt it had power, so she took it home without knowing anything about its value or origin. After holding on to it for 4 years, she eventually discovered that it was a very valuable Mexican painting that was stolen in 1987. So she contacted authorities and received a $15,000 reward plus a percentage of its sale price of over $1 million. In August of 2010, a 13-year-old British teenager was struck by lightning at 1313 on Friday the 13th. He was the only one struck amongst a crowd of 150,000 people who were watching an air show. In 2014, a 39-year-old Brazilian woman named Adriana wanted to find her mother who abandoned her as a baby. So she went on a TV show and ended up finding her mom through the power of the internet. The two had an emotional reunion, but her mother revealed that she had also abandoned Adriana's infant brother, Leandro. In a bizarre twist, Adriana's husband turned out to be her brother, Leandro. But despite the pair being siblings, they vowed to never separate. In 1998, Dana Carvey underwent open heart surgery to clear a blocked artery, but the surgeon operated on the wrong blood vessel. After spending 6 months recovering from the life-threatening botch, he won a $7.5 million lawsuit against the hospital and donated all of it to charity. In 2015, an Italian grandma accidentally sent 2 adults and 3 children to the hospital after making them hot cocoa that had expired in 1990. Pearl Jam's song Jeremy was based on the real-life classroom suicide of 15-year-old Texas student Jeremy Wade. He was released from a mental hospital once his parents' insurance money ran out, so he brought a revolver to class and shot himself in front of 30 students. In 2013, a collection of files revealed that the US government lobotomized over 2,000 veterans against their will after World War II. They were lobotomized for reasons such as PTSD, depression, schizophrenia, and homosexuality. In 2018, 16-year-old Kevin Watkins was lagging horribly while attempting to play Xbox in his Georgia family's home. In an effort to improve the speed, he decided to change the Wi-Fi password to prevent others from using it and slowing down the connection while he was gaming. Soon enough, an argument broke out between Kevin and his mom, escalating to a point where his older sister Alexis had to step in to prevent Kevin from physically harming their mother. Tragically, Kevin placed Alexis in a strong chokehold and refused to let go despite his younger brother and mother begging for him to stop. By the time police arrived 15 minutes later, Alexis was no longer moving or responsive, but Kevin still had her in a chokehold. She had been starved of oxygen for a lengthy amount of time, resulting in extreme brain damage. Alexis was quickly rushed to the hospital, but was soon pronounced dead from asphyxiation. Kevin was tried for murder and sentenced to life in prison for the tragic incident. Around 1902, Einstein had an illegitimate child named Lee Searle with his future wife Mileva. Very little is known about the girl other than that she was mentally disabled and died from infection at a very young age. In all likelihood, Albert never met the girl in person. Her existence was only discovered in 1987 through a collection of letters. Soon afterwards, the relationship was falling apart, so Einstein made Mileva sign a contract to help work things out. It had multiple conditions such as that my clothes and laundry are kept in good order, that I will receive my 3 meals regularly in my room, and that my bedroom and study are kept neat at all times. After those two eventually got divorced, Einstein married the daughter of his mother's sister, making them first cousins. Despite being very smart, Albert's second son Edward was diagnosed with schizophrenia and described by his father as an insoluble problem. He was sent to a mental asylum at the age of 20 and remained there for the next 35 years before dying of a stroke in 1965. Einstein encouraged President Roosevelt to develop an atomic bomb because he feared the Nazis would make one first. But he deeply regretted this after hearing about the devastation of Hiroshima. And knowing that his discoveries led to the invention of the atomic bomb made him very depressed. After suffering from an aortic aneurysm in 1955, Einstein refused surgery, stating that he wanted to end his life gracefully. He was taken to the hospital but refused any further medical intervention. Einstein's last words were unfortunately lost forever since he said them in German, which the nurse treating him did not speak. The man who performed Einstein's autopsy stole his brain and kept it in a jar for 20 years. He found that the part of Einstein's brain that processes math and language was 15% bigger than the average human's. Einstein's eyeballs were also taken by the same man and now remain locked away in a safety deposit box in New York City. In 1989, the Buffalo Sabres goalie had his neck sliced by another player's skate, severing his carotid artery. It resulted in so much blood loss that 11 fans fainted, 2 had heart attacks, and 3 players puked on the ice. His life was saved by the team medic, who luckily served in the Vietnam War as a combat medic. In 1962, a Cuban boxer named Benny Paret made fun of his opponent Emil Griffith for being a homosexual. Griffith ended up beating Paret so badly that he fell into a coma and died 10 days after the fight. In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosives. However, the ball never made it to the battlefield since the explosives gave it an unpredictable flight. In 1977, the University of Evansville men's basketball team was involved in a tragic plane crash. The crash killed every player on the team except for one man who didn't make the trip due to an injury. 2 weeks later, that only remaining player was killed by a drunk driver. This creepy-looking costume is actually a 16th century scuba suit designed by Leonardo da Vinci. It was equipped with 2 breathing tubes attached to a cork diving bell floating on the surface. While working in the water city of Venice, Da Vinci designed the suit for sneak attacks on enemy ships from underwater. This golden throne chair was found in the tomb of King Tut. Its colors haven't faded over 3,000 years, highlighting the impressive skills of ancient Egyptian craftsmen. Here's the anchor of a 13th century Mongol invasion ship that was just recently lifted out of the sea near Nagasaki, Japan. Discovered in a dried-up lake bed in New Mexico, this mile-long path of footprints is the longest prehistoric human trail ever found. The 12,000-year-old tracks belong to a toddler and its young adult mother who was in a hurry and sometimes carried the child on her back. It was most likely a perilous journey since scientists also found the footprints of mammoths, giant sloths, direwolves, and saber-toothed tigers at the same site. While serving a life sentence for murder, Rocky Beeman brutally murdered a fellow inmate who was serving a life sentence for essaying a 10-year-old girl. But despite this, Beeman was later given a child rapist as his cellmate, who he proceeded to brutally murder as well. He said he resented sex offenders and that killing them gave him, quote, "the best feeling I've had in a long time." He also said the only way to stop him from killing them was to execute him. Beeman was eventually sentenced to death, but took his own life while on death row in 2020. Grady Stiles Jr. was born in 1937 with a rare genetic condition known as ectrodactyly, which gave him claw-like hands and feet. He became a circus performer under the name Lobster Boy, but was known to be a viciously abusive alcoholic in person. In 1978, he was convicted of murdering his daughter's fiancé on the day before their wedding. He openly confessed to the murder but wasn't sent to prison since no state institution had the resources for an inmate with his condition. Stiles continued to perform until 1992 when he was murdered by a hitman hired by his wife and son. 2 of Kurt Cobain's best friends, Mark Lanigan and Dylan Carson, say that Courtney Love saved their lives after Kurt's death. They were struggling addicts at the time, and Courtney felt that Kurt would want them to be saved. So she decided to support them both morally and financially so that they could go to rehab and turn their lives around. A man's dying wish was to be buried on his Harley Davidson in a glass casket so that his rider friends could see his final ride. If a pregnant mother suffers organ damage, the baby in the womb sends stem cells to repair the damaged organ. While on death row for killing a police officer in 1987, Tennessee man Philip Workman was told to make his last meal request. But instead of a meal for himself, he wanted a pizza to be donated to a local homeless person. His final request was denied, and Workman refused to eat anything before he was executed that night. But the next day, homeless shelters across Tennessee received thousands of donated pizzas from people all over the state honoring Workman's last request. In 1955, 24-year-old actor James Dean died in a car crash while driving his Porsche 550 Spyder, which he nicknamed Little Bastard. After the accident, the car was towed to a garage in Los Angeles, and while it was being repaired, it fell off its jack and crushed a mechanic's legs. The engine and transmission were later sold to two professional racers, both of whom later crashed their vehicles during the same race and were seriously injured. The car's tires were also sold, and the new owner was eventually killed in yet another car crash. Over time, the stories of deaths and injuries associated with the car led to rumors of a curse. Some believed that the car was haunted and that anyone who came into contact with it would suffer misfortune. But in 1960, the car disappeared while being transported from Miami to Los Angeles. The car has never been found, and its whereabouts remain a mystery to this day. In 2006, the Miami Hurricanes football team gathered in prayer for their teammate Brian Pata after he had been murdered by an unknown assailant. 15 years later, his teammate Rashawn Jones ended up being charged with his murder. During a 1998 soccer match in the Republic of Congo, a lightning bolt struck one of the goal pitches. It killed all 11 members of the home team because they were all wearing metal spikes. But the other team was left completely unscathed, for they had been wearing rubber cleats. During the 1910s, there was an American baseball team that completely consisted of death row prisoners. As long as they kept winning, their executions were delayed. Hall of Fame boxer Sugar Ray Robinson once had a nightmare where he killed his next opponent in the ring. Afraid that his dream was telling him something, he initially backed out of his next fight until a priest convinced him otherwise. He ended up scoring a decisive knockout in the 8th round that resulted in the death of his opponent, Jimmy Doyle. 2. South Korean actor Jo Son is known for playing Random Task in the first Austin Powers movie. But in 2008, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for torturing and essaying a female victim on Christmas Day. 3 years later, 27 years were added onto his sentence after he murdered his cellmate. In 2019, Florida man Grant Amato murdered his mother, father, and brother and tried to stage it as a murder-suicide committed by his brother. But police didn't buy his story when they found out his parents were threatening to kick him out of their house over his severe porn addiction. He had stolen over $200,000 from them and spent it all on a cam model from Bulgaria. In 1916, a Tennessee circus elephant named Mary murdered her handler by crushing his head on his second day of the job. The circus owner then decided to publicly execute the 6,000-pound elephant by hanging her from a crane. After she was killed in front of a crowd of 2,500 men, women, and children, an autopsy revealed that she had a severely infected tooth that was likely the cause of her murderous rage. This was one of the last photos captured of Steve Jobs, the genius behind Apple. It was taken just a few days before he passed away from pancreatic cancer on October 5, 2011. During World War I, 20-year-old French soldier Albert Roche was found sleeping on duty and was sentenced to death for abandoning his post. But thankfully, a messenger arrived just moments before his execution to tell the full story. Albert had crawled for nearly 10 hours under enemy fire to rescue his wounded captain before passing out from exhaustion. In 2013, a Chinese businessman hired a hitman to take out his competitor for $282,000. But the hitman hired another hitman to do the job, offering $141,000. That man then hired another hitman, who hired another hitman, who hired another hitman. The fifth hitman, who was offered $14,000 for the job, tried convincing the target to fake his own death. But instead, he reported the threat to authorities, and all 6 men, including the original businessman, were sent to prison.